Hello, and welcome to Designers at Home. I'm Mark Weaver. Thank you for joining us this morning. Today we have a very exciting guest, James Magni. So James, I'll give you a little background on James while he's getting ready to join us. James Magni has been recognized as one of the foremost modernist designers of our time. His inimitable style has left an indelible mark on the world of architecture and interior design. And more importantly, it continues to move modernism into a new era. And for this reason, Jim has achieved the highest accolades in his field. Architectural Digest has named him to their AD 100, their annual list of distinguished interior designers and architects. He's also been honored by the Robb Report as one of the top 40 worldwide designers. And Lux Magazine, he holds a place on their annual gold list. So after earning his degree in architecture from the University of Nebraska, he worked for corporate architectural firms in Dallas, Texas. And then in 1988, he established his own firm in Los Angeles, Magni Designs. And in 1996, he created the Magni Home Collection, which showcases lighting, rugs, and furniture, all of his design. The collection boasts over 200 pieces. And as always, it's Jim's signature of excellence and restraint that characterizes his furniture as well as his projects. And we're going to ask Jim to join us. I personally consider Jim one of the finest designers in the world today. So it's an honor to have my friend and colleague join us this morning. Hello and good morning, Jim. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Great. So I just gave them a little background on you. And so, Jim, you're originally from Chicago, as I remember. Is that right?
Yeah, my parents immigrated here from Italy. We ended up in the Midwest, and then, oddly enough, ended up in Omaha, Nebraska, and Lincoln, Nebraska for architectural school.
So, in growing up in the Midwest in Nebraska, I mean, when you think about artists and great talent, it doesn't seem like perhaps the most inspirational place to grow up.
Right, yeah. Well, you know, there was, for those of us who still, I mean, there were people like Ed Ruscha, who was a great artist who came from there, from Omaha, Cedric Hartman, who's one of my favorite lighting designers. So I think there's talent everywhere in the world. And I think those places just have an impact or inspire you in a certain way. If you're in India, if you're in Omaha, you know, it's just in your soul when you're born, I think, the creativity.
No, I agree with you. I like you, I was born in a very small town with very little cultural or artistic influence. And I don't know, maybe the one thing we have in common is we both have an Italian heritage. So
Yeah,
it's in our blood.
it's in our blood.
But I have, you know, I guess it's just innate. You're born with certain gifts, and yours took you in a direction and took you from Nebraska to Texas to Los Angeles. So when you moved to Texas, when you left Nebraska, you worked in the architectural field. Tell us a little bit about that.
I started out working for a very large architectural firm in Dallas, Texas, and they quickly promoted me to vice president. There was probably 150 people in the firm. And so at 26, I was managing 15 interior designers and realized very quickly that management was not for me. Mm-hmm. So I started my own company. One of the clients there gave me a tremendous opportunity, moved to Los Angeles, and started my own.
Well, that's exciting. It's great that to have somebody see talent and recognize it and provide that opportunity for you. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, I was extremely lucky, blessed, whatever way you want to look at it. I had a lot of mentors throughout my career.
Mm-hmm.
I think young designers should seek out mentors. I had some financial backers that believed in my talent. So yes, I was very lucky.
So you have a background in architecture,
Yeah.
and that's very important in the work that we do because architecture is sort of the background for everything we do. It's the building block for a successful interior. So does that have, I mean, you work with a lot of great architects. So how does that impact your work?
Well, I think that these architects really appreciate the fact that we approach an interior kind of, I always feel like a glove. If you turn a glove inside out, it's seamless. And that's really what the building is. It's the outside envelope and then the inside envelope that should be totally cohesive. So we have to, as interior designers, not only do we have to program our clients, but we have to understand what, if we're working with Tom Kundig, it's a very different thought process than if we're working with, say, a different architect here in LA. And really study their philosophy, what they're trying to accomplish, the sight lines, the view lines, the space, rather than coming in with our own signature and trying to sort of impose that on their architecture. It has to be a very harmonious event.
Yeah, and it's very important to I always tell my clients, it's so important to have a team of people that all get along and have a single vision. And it's the same when you're bringing in a landscape architect in the project, because it's the entire team of people that it takes to create this. Some projects are very complex and they involve lighting engineers, audio video people, and so forth. And it's really putting together all these people as a team and to end up with a successful project.
Yeah, the team is everything. And I think earlier in your career, when I was younger, you don't really know how to harness or manage your ego. And that gets in the way. And what we have to understand is that, and particularly projects today, as technical as they're getting, we have to be a team player. We are one part of a team. There's lighting designers, there's audiovisual consultants, and really just sort of respect that process.
Yes. So I know all the audio, video, and technical skills that it takes for a project are sort of out of my periphery. And so we rely on people who have expertise in those fields and bring them in. And that's to everybody's advantage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's changing rapidly.
So Jim, one of the signatures of my style has always been the use of antiquity and collectibles. And I think that's one of the reasons I find your work so exquisite, is that you have a similar sensibility and you do very modern interiors, but you use pieces in your interiors to create a dynamic and warmth in the patina. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your approach is?
I think we start off with the architecture and make sure that that shell, I call it a six-sided box, the floors, the walls, the ceilings, and make sure that that's, again, a cohesive statement with the architecture. And from there, if you use all sort of very modern furniture,
Yes.
it starts to look like a showroom. And so, this is a very intimate business. We spend a lot of time with our clients programming them and understanding them right away. It doesn't do any good to know them intimately in a year because it's too late. So we go through an extensive programming exercise with these people. And I think it's sort of this journey that we're going through toward sort of lifting them up in terms of a life, making sure that this space that they're going to live in is it's going to be inspiring for them every day. It's going to be enlightening for them every day. And so I think that trying to get all of these different things together to work, different consultants, the architecture, the client. I think orchestrating all of that is important. But to your question, yes, there has to be layers of things, whether it's shopping in Paris flea markets and finding things that are 100 years old. There has to be some patina to it. And I think it's an interesting analogy because what we're struggling with right now in terms of society is diversity, and bringing in people and things from different backgrounds that we don't perhaps understand, that we should understand and learn about. And that learning is fascinating, which is a large part of why we bring in art into our spaces, really fine art, and understanding what that artist is doing. So between art and antiquities and using very sumptuous materials, yes, you can do a less is more space, but it becomes one of our projects when you layer the beautiful materials, the cashmeres, the calfskins, just this great materials right next to concrete and steel and glass, and you merge those into a very sumptuous space.
Yeah. Well, all those elements are so important because I think as you look at the magazines, all the publications today, there's the direction in the last many years has been modern design. And so much of it, it's all very beautiful, but there's just these rooms with the traditional banquette sofa, Italian sofa, coffee table, very clean. The rooms, after a while, there's no character, there's no soul to them.
That's the word.
And
Yeah.
and I know what you do is you do very clean interiors, but they have character and they have soul. There's feeling in there. There's emotion. So if you were doing a modern living room, just give us a for instance of what you might bring into a space to create some character and soul.
Well, I think it depends upon the age of the client, because somebody who's 35 who we've designed for and somebody who is 75 are looking for different things in their spaces, different levels of comfort. It really, to me, is very specific about the client. Who is this client? How do they live? Our questionnaire for them at the beginning is 20 pages long. But to answer your question about character and soul, lots of younger clients don't really want antiques, or they don't want vintage pieces because they don't understand them. They think that those are things from, past years, and they want to look forward.
Right.
And so, you have to sit back and educate them about so many things in a very polite, respectful way about when I say art, it could be a Han Dynasty piece, it could be an Art Deco piece, it could be a painting that's been, is a contemporary painting, but it has to be this combination of things that reflect them after they've learned about them. I always say at first they're going to say, like we all would, I don't understand that painting, or I don't want any old furniture. It's used.
Right.
And you're like, let me explain to you a little bit deeper about what Dupré-Lafond was doing, or Jules Lelou was doing, and the artistry behind it. And then they're like, aha. So.
Well, this part of I think our responsibility as designers and professionals is to educate our clients about things and expose them to things that perhaps they're not familiar with. And so I think with clients, it's like going to a museum, perhaps. If you walk through a current exhibition at a museum and you go through and you look at a bunch of paintings, and you may have you may not have a great reaction to things. Whereas if you go through with a docent or a guided tour, you learn about the artists, their background, what inspired them, what motivated them. One of our previous talks about 3 months ago with Leo Marmol from Marmol Radziner Architects. And we talked primarily about his art rather than his architecture, because he's now becoming an artist. And it was really fascinating to me that he is of Cuban descent, and how much his Cuban background had on the impact in his art. And then once I found that out, I could understand his art better, and it had a completely different meaning to me. So what you were saying about educating your young clients, this is very, very important, because we have a different appreciation. It's just like other cultures and other foods. You need to sort of immerse yourself in them and learn about them in order to appreciate them.
And I think be open-minded and aware of the diversity of all of it, whether it's food or politics, to just be open to learning.
Yes. I think as a designer, that's actually, you don't have to be a designer. Anybody in life, you always remain open to learning.
Yeah.
I remember my mother at 95, she said, "You know, dear, there isn't a day that goes by that I haven't learned something new." And she said, "I love to surround myself with younger people because I'm always seeing life from a different perspective that way."
Sure.
And I think that's a word of wisdom.
It absolutely is, especially now with the way technology has changed things. It sort of has a split between people who are younger and people who are older. As we see, they just use technology for everything. So.
Yes, yes. So Jim, can we talk a little bit about your collection? I love your collection. We've just recently specified some of your pieces on a couple projects.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming that your collection evolved or was a natural progression from the pieces you've designed for products or for projects.
Yeah, like so many designers and architects, I think you have a concept in mind, and you start looking at catalogs, or you start looking through the internet trying to find what it is, and it doesn't exist, so you create it, and then it evolves into what we call a line that you put in a showroom. And we're taking a little bit different approach now. I'm working on can't show you too much because it's going to be, there's an editorial on it, but we're working on some Murano glass pieces.
Yes.
And as you know, that's an Italian process from the island of Murano. We're working on sort of a Japanese series of, and we don't call these light fixtures, we call these illuminated objects, because they're really art objects that are illuminated. If you want to refer to them as a lamp, you're welcome to, but we don't see them like that. We see them as limited edition illuminated objects. So during this time of COVID, after the initial shock, I spent this time coming up with 15 new lighting pieces. It was a great creative time because you're more isolated, and it gives you the freedom to, and the time to come up with new ideas and things. So that's the collection has grown a lot. My niece Brooke Magni runs it out of Chicago. Yes. And we just hired someone in the New York area that can help us. And we have the same clients like yourself that order from us on a regular basis, and I'm really proud of that. I think repeat business for any business is a sign that you're doing something right.
Yes, well, you're certainly doing something right because the pieces are spectacular. I know one of my most favorite pieces in your line is the metal coffee table with the thick glass top. I'm not sure the name of the piece.
It's the jewel table. This is a picture of Michelle Obama, obviously, and Oprah Winfrey in front of the jewel table. And this was designed, this project was designed, this is the jewel table here. Michael Smith, the brilliant Michael Smith, I should say, because he designed the home and some of the spaces in the White House for the Obamas. And we got a handwritten note from Michelle Obama that my niece keeps right above her desk, and just saying that they were moving and that some of the favorite pieces were coming with them, and that our 2 jewel tables were some of her favorite pieces that she lives with. And so that's when you feel like I'm affecting someone's thinking in a positive way. So we are all artists, whether it's a painting. I have in my house, this is one of my favorite artists. This is Candy Wiley, who actually was awarded the commission to paint Barack Obama's portrait.
Yes.
And it's a sort of a traveling exhibition until it ends up in its final home. But Candy took street kids, hip hop artists, and paint them in these sort of regal ways on horseback. And as you read about what he's doing, because if I just show you a picture, it doesn't have as much meaning as if I tell you this is Archangel Gabriel, who's carrying the shaft. And it's one of the youngest people he's ever painted. But he tells you the story of rewriting history and taking people from the street and elevating them to a level that is majestic. And it's sort of a statement on what we can do with our own lives. You can come from a place of a very low place in life, and you can do whatever you want to do. You can create your own reality, and that's what Candy Wiley has done.
Yeah, it's very inspirational.
Yes, and then you talk about soul. I think there has to be a lot of these things that are soulful. And what I find with clients that's amazing is, and I've worked with the same art consultant for 35 years. He's a genius in my opinion, because he brings emerging artists who he sees future in, and he brings them to myself, and he brings them to clients, and he educates us as to why he thinks they're brilliant. We had the Art Freeze show at Paramount Pictures for the first time.
Yeah, that was a great show.
Yeah, that's a Tomas Saraceno, which I was able to buy for my home.
I remember seeing that piece.
Yeah, it had been purchased by a museum. 3 days later, you get a phone call, and the museum funding has fallen through, and this is your one opportunity. And what I always tell clients is, this is not about writing a check. Anybody can write a check. This is about an artist. If you look at it from the artist's point of view, they want their work to be bought by museums first. Secondly, they want their art to be purchased by major art collectors with major names. And then there's people like us who love their work. And so it's really about that we bring to our clients the gift of access to buy these works of art that, I've had clients now, I've been doing this for a while, who bought Ed Ruscha for $80,000 and it went to auction for $4.7 million.
Yes.
So we make wealthy people a lot of money through their real estate, through their art. So whenever they start to wiggle or complain about the cost of something, I just flat out tell them now, I am making you millions of dollars.
Well, it's, that's bringing the right people to your clients. And the art consultant that you work with, Jim, are you at liberty to mention their name?
Oh, sure. His name is Michael Thomas.
Okay.
He lives in Dallas, Texas. He only works with about 15 people. Mm-hmm. And I think he actually, Pam Giacarino from Lux did a talk with him and myself and one of my clients, GT Dave, who is the kombucha king, they call him. He was in Forbes magazine as one of the youngest billionaires. But we've been working for him for, 12 years, 15 years. I met him when he was 24 years old.
Wow.
So
Jim, tell us a little bit about, you've got some very exciting projects and exciting clients. Tell us about where your projects have taken you. They've taken you all around the world.
Yes. I have worked in Moscow, which was a huge learning curve, because you're fabricating things in Los Angeles or New York and you're shipping everything to Moscow. But it was a 30,000 square foot house. It was a white glass house. And, you know, there's a lot of snow in Moscow. So it was sort of a white on white kind of dream. And we took several trips over there. And that was a learning curve in terms of their culture and how things are done. We've worked in Korea. We're working with Tom Kundig right now on a project in Kauai for a client. And then doing things really all over the United States, which is a learning experience for me, because if you do something in Jackson Hole or Montana, it's going to probably feel and should feel differently than a project that we do in New York or the hills of LA. So I think it's all about the site and really feeling at home with that site.
Oh, that's always important.
It is.
So I really love discussing the involvement and incorporating art into an interior, because it's always so thrilling when you have a client who is interested in collecting art or that has a great art collection. So as a designer, it's such a treat to design space around art. I always feel that the furnishing should be dynamic, but they should be secondary to the art collection. They shouldn't.
Agreed.
Right. They should complement the art collection.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about your house and how you approach the design of your house. Everybody's always curious about how designers live. So tell us a little bit about your house, Jim.
My house will be published in a magazine in a couple of months. People refer to it as a mini museum. It's a mid-century house in Benedict Canyon area in Beverly Hills, and it's very mid-century. And so I left that alone. I restored some things. I got in contact with the architect, who was in his late 80s, still alive. And then for me, it's just a very simple environment, sumptuous materials, cashmere fabrics, silk rugs, but then the art is really the event. And so, between the pieces I just showed you, the Tommaso Orsino, which it's interesting because people will come into the living room, they're like, that's an interesting chandelier. And you're like, well, it's not quite really a chandelier.
Right.
But when you learn about this piece, it has to do with the fact that this artist believes that it's carbon fiber wires and stainless steel panels, so it reflects everything around the room. So it really reflects the whole art collection in that one space, in that one piece. And this artist is fascinated by spider webs because it's noted that that's the most, it's the strongest system in nature, is the spider web.
Yes.
And so once you start to look at pieces and understand what they're doing, like this image here is really, this is a living room shot. And, it's got some really great artists in there, and it's got some emerging artists. The
right.
purple piece in the background is an emerging artist. And so it's that mix of, same thing when we dress. If we put on a pair of Gap chinos and a Gap t-shirt, but we have on a Ferragamo belt and a pair of Ferragamo shoes, or that's what we learned from the Italian background, is things were tailored perfectly, attention to detail, even if it was an inexpensive pair of slacks. But the Italians are great tailors, and your shoes were always shined, they were always polished. It had to do with pride. And you may only own one pair, but the way you present yourself to the world is the best way possible with any budget.
So I remember one time we were having dinner and you said that collecting art has been the most meaningful part of your career.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was wonderful.
Well, I think that as interior designers, we're taught from a decorative approach to find paintings that will look pretty in the space. Maybe they have the same colors as pillows or upholstery, And so we get criticized for taking a decorative approach.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that's beautiful if that can happen. But I think it's more beautiful if we educate ourselves about artists, um, and then educate. And I have tons and tons of books that I read late at night about what is this artist doing. I've told this story so many times, people are probably sick of hearing it, but it's the best example I can give. 20 years ago, Michael Thomas brought in a Ross Bleckner painting. It was a black and white polka dot painting. And it was $100,000. And I said, what are you doing bringing in a black and white polka dot painting? And Michael looked at me because he's very serious about art. And he said, Jim, look at those white dots. And he said, those are not dots. Those are blurred faces and hands, which is the title of the painting. And Ross Bleckner is documenting the AIDS crisis. And these are faces and hands in a black background of people who are passing from this world and they're transitioning into another world. And you should know about this because of what is the importance of him documenting the AIDS crisis is. And you're like, okay. And it was sort of an aha moment because I looked at this painting and it had a completely different meaning to me in a matter of moments. Once he explained what I was seeing, because I'm assigning a meaning to it, black and white polka dots. He's educating me as to what the artist has painted.
Yes.
And it changed the way I looked at art forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a book a moment ago. You have a book on your work. Is it Magni Designs?
It's Magni Modernism.
Magni Modernism. Yeah, it's a very beautiful book.
Well, thank you. Mayor Russ, who I adore, we all respect him. He wrote the foreword to it. Abrams published the book. We are working on our second monograph right now. We've just photographed about 10 projects, which is, these monographs are huge efforts. And it'll include the Magni Home Collection, which, like I said, there's a lot of pieces that we view as art. Some pieces are sofas and chairs and things that we need that, form follows function. Some pieces are limited edition art pieces. So this monograph will show more of that as well.
Great. So, well, it's been a real treat visiting with you, Jim. I know everybody's enjoyed it, and I hope I know you've inspired many people. And all I can say is that I hope you all visit Jim's website. You look at his beautiful work and his home collection. It's quite inspiring. And is your website the best way to find you, Jim?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it even has my cell number on there. I like being super accessible. Designers call me from all over the United States, like yourself, who are doing, A projects, and they'll say, hey, can you custom make so-and-so? And I'll get them in touch with the team. And I like that hands-on, the social aspect of this business.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. And so your website is what?
It's Magni Coleman. Jason Coleman is my business partner. He came on, we've been together for like 12 years, but he is now a partner. So it's either Magni Design or Magni Coleman, and they can find us very easily that way.
Great. Thank you, Jim. It's been a real treat visiting with you. Thank you for joining us.
Mark, thank you. I'm grateful. And goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed listening to Jim today. He's a wonderful talent. My next guest will be in 2 weeks on October 9th, and we're going to be talking with Rebecca Anderson, who is the director of Lotus Land in Montecito, California. Lotus Land was an estate created by Ganna Walska, who was a singer and socialite. And she started this estate in 1941. And today it's a spectacular collection of exotic plants on 37 acres. It's recognized as one of the 10 best gardens in the world. So, and this will be exciting because this is something you can do today in the age of our restrictions of going places. You can make a visit to Lotus Land. So please join us on on October, what did I say this was? October 9th for that talk. And then in 4 weeks, we have another very exciting guest, Leslie Jones. She's the Director of Museum Affairs, and she's the Chief Curator for the Preservation Society of Newport, Rhode Island. And as you know, Newport was the location for the summer homes of the Vanderbilts and some of the most influential and wealthy families in America. So that's going to be a very, very exciting chat. So from the wonderful world of design, I'm Mark Weaver, and thank you for joining me.